Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mitch Taco Bell. I'm your host for Tall Tales with Taco. Believe it or not, it is Tuesday, and I do, in fact, go eat tacos for lunch at my local Chewy's, which is phenomenal, especially little dollar margaritas frozen. My buddy over in the UK, Michael Sheriff, asked what I was doing. I said, well, I'm sitting here eating tacos. He thought I was kidding. No, I actually do that on Tuesdays. I go have tacos because it's Tall Tales with Taco. Um, but if you guys were around on Friday, I just have to say it was an incredible trip down to Austin to go visit a 99-year-old, the last living World War II ace. He flew F4U Corsairs, Colonel Dean Caswell. If you didn't get a chance to watch that, I please go check out that podcast because it was set up in his living room, and he called it his ready room, and it was incredible. Nostalgia, history all around. How many guys in his squadron were all aces? Just just incredible. There will never be another ace. I mean, even jokingly with Top Gun, Maverick only got three, right? Which is pretty dang good. But in modern warfare, unless we're going to get to the Chinese or the Russians, you're never going to see another ace again. Anyway, that being said, if you get a chance, please go back, check that out. I think you'll enjoy it. Tonight, I've got a great friend that's going to be on the show. Yogi is a man of talent and a man of all services. Not only has he been a Marine, Navy, Army, National Guard, Air Force, Jolly Greens, this guy is incredible. So Yonel Dorelis, Yogi is his call sign. I'm going to bring him on. How are you doing, Yogi? What's up, brother?
Doing good, Taco. Good to be here, sir. Thank you for having me.
Are you kidding? So, I've got a fascination with actors because I just think in our job, in our profession, we're actors. We really are. A lot of times in front of the troops, in front of your crew. Sometimes you have to put on a good game face, and you learn leadership and you learn different things, which I believe translates well to being an actor, um, which we're going to get into because you are one. And I love on IMDb, I looked you up, and there's a video on there where you're in a VA counseling session. Was that? I think that was New Amsterdam, right?
Yes,
But
sir.
we'll get into that, folks. You're gonna love Yogi's voice. Now, if you close your eyes when you listen to Yogi talk, he sounds like a 6'2" New York Bronx cop, and you're standing in Times Square, and I could just imagine having a conversation with Yogi the way he sounds. But hey, let's start off. United States Marine Corps. How did you manage to hit four services?
Well, it wasn't on purpose. I like to joke. I'm probably the king of the worst timing. I hit the Marine Corps at I guess a bad time for aviators. I I we got to go back. I'm one of these guys. I don't come from a military family at all.
Really?
My mother's brothers, my uncle served in World War II. Like everybody did, they did their thing and came back. My one uncle was a paratrooper. I think I think he got shot in training before he could even go overseas. And then my other uncle was in the Navy. Did convoy duty. I think he was sunk once, and he was a gunner's mate, but was always put on those Liberty ships going overseas as an anti-aircraft gunner. But
Uh,
they did their thing, came back, and went into civilian life. And I grew up. My father died when I was young, so it was just me, my older brother, and my mom. And my mom, typical Jewish mom. I mean, I think she wanted a doctor or a lawyer, but I that was never going to be me. And I was always interested in the military as far back as I can remember. I mean, with Facebook and things like that, I've reconnected with kids I went to school with in junior high and high school, and they still remember me just drawing airplanes in the back. And I don't know why. And then for a Marine, this couldn't be more cliche. I saw the sands of Iwo Jima. I think I was about 8 or 9 years old the first time I saw it, right? And
yeah.
I think every Marine's seen it. So if I describe the scene, you'll know what I'm talking about. So it's the end of the movie. Sergeant Stryker just gets shot. They read the letter, be a better man, to his son. And then a really famous actor of the time, John Agar, who played the guy he'd been butting heads with the whole time, gets up and he's like, all right, let's get back in the war. And then they start going down the hill from what's supposed to be Suribachi, smoke, cue the Marine Corps hymn, hooked from that point on. I was like,
really?
That
was a catalyst.
I don't know who these MFers are, but that's what I'm going to do. And from that point on, I wanted to be a Marine, but I always wanted to fly. And then somehow I was able to make that nexus that you could be a Marine aviator, and then so that kind of became my focus. And, but I didn't realize that in order to do those things, they were looking for a certain type of person. I was not that type of person. My mom worked a lot, and this is not her fault. She had to keep a roof over our head. I like to joke I was born with a silver spoon, but it got yanked. So, she had to work, and I was on my own, and I was not the best kid. I mean, the only thing I had going for me, I wasn't a horrible student, so I managed to get through school. But I didn't, I thought being a Marine officer was going to just show up and go, hey, I want to be a Marine officer, and they would just bow their heads and be happy that a guy like me showed up. Well,
no, get on that pull-up bar. Let me see you knock out at least 15 pull-ups before I waste my time talking to you.
Well, the first time I knew the Marines were different was there was a recruiting station on 86 in Lexington. Anybody who's listening who's an old New Yorker, it's no longer there. I was like 14 or 15. I wanted to go up there and get the literature and the T-shirts, and I hung around like a lot of guys do. But I walked in there and they were like, you want to be a Marine? I was like, yeah. And they were like, they were like, you don't really look like much. I was scrawny. I mean, I was skinny. I was maybe all of 135 pounds, and they would, it was just the kind of thing. The attitude was like, yeah, if you think you can hack it, we'll see. It's pretty tough. Guys like you usually don't make it, blah, blah, blah. Well, of course, that was, more motivation for me. Well, fast forward to now, I understand. I hear about the platoon leaders class, the PLC program.
Right.
And there was officer selection office on the west side of New York. And I show up there. Again, I was in college, but I really wasn't cognizant of interviewing skills and those kind of things. So I honestly think I might have worn a wife beater when I walked in, like literally, to say, hey, I want to be a Marine officer, right?
To the recruiter.
Yeah, nice. To the Marine also, right? So there was this major there, a Mustang. I remember his name. To this day, his name was Colonel Bausch. And long story short, he sat me down and said, not only no, but hell no. He's like, I wouldn't recommend you for this program now, no matter what. You need to learn how to interview. You need to learn how to dress. You need to act like a human being. You need to work on your vocabulary. He goes, if you want to enlist in the Marine Corps, that's an option. But he goes, but I won't recommend you for this program. Come back in a year if you're serious. Wow. Well, like most things at the time, I thought it was the end of the world. But like a lot of things that you think of the end of the world at the time, that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I was determined now to get in this program. And I spent the next year, learning how to interview, learning how to dress, improving my vocabulary, my diction, trying to just be able to make what would be considered a good impression.
Right.
And, this was before the internet. And so, that meant going to the library, reading books like How to Succeed in Business and How to Make Friends and Influence People, and talking to people, friends of my mom's who were in business, former military people, and, basically learning how to make a good impression. And so I showed up a year later. He was gone. There was a new major there, Major Sullivan, but I got in the program, and I got into the PLC. I was accepted in the PLC program, where I made my first of many mistakes in the military. I decided to go the 2 6-week option because
there's nothing wrong with that. PLC is awesome. Have you seen my PLC Camp Upshur page? It's on Facebook.
I'm going to find it, but I wanted to salvage half my summer and be able to go out to the Hamptons with my friends. And,
right.
And so I did the 2 6 weeks, which I think is silly because you just get tortured twice. And like I mentioned to you before, from my OSO, there were 6 of us who started, and only 2 of us went back the next summer. I have a distinct memory, and I'm 60 now, so this was 1981, of riding the back. I was on the back of my friend's motorcycle. I remember it was a 14th Street and Lexington Avenue in New York. We stopped at a light. I was going back to Camp Upshur the next day for PLC Senior. I just leaned over and threw up because just that, the anxiety of going back. But I couldn't quit because I had talked so much bullshit about being a Marine that there was no way I could quit. And so there was no way I could drop while I was there. And I do remember hoping I would break my leg on the O course, because if I fall and break my leg, I can leave with honor, but that didn't happen, thankfully. And I completed it and got my commission. But, I was that stereotypical kind of spoiled knucklehead college kid. Spoiled, I was spoiled. I don't want to say I was spoiled. I was on my own. My mom was working. I didn't have a lot of structure. I thought I was a tough guy, but I really wasn't. And then I ran into these Marine drill instructors who, this is the 80s. Most of these guys have been to Vietnam, and most of the sergeant instructor cadre and officers had been to Vietnam. And it was a transformative experience, like I like to say. I needed it. I'll illustrate it by saying I was a very heavy sleeper. Camp Upshur is different. OCS is different now. Camp Upshur, they stopped using, I think in 86, you said?
87.
Somewhere around then? Yeah.
87.
So
86 was the last year we used it.
Camp Upshur was Gomer Pyle style Quonset huts with the concrete decks and a fan at each end for cooling in the Virginia summer. But my first intro to the Marine Corps was I was rolled out of the rack and kicked in the ribs and told to get the F up off the deck because I didn't, when they came in with smacking the trash cans, I obviously didn't get up quick enough. And I remember almost crying going, I can't believe this is what I wanted. But it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Again, the farther I get away from being a Marine, I make a post about it every November 10th.
Yeah,
I realized what an amazing experience it was and how transformative it was for me, because that's where I learned to not be selfish, to not quit. That's the number one thing I learned from the Marine Corps is just don't quit no matter what it is. Fail rather than quit, and that means if you run till you fall over. That means if you're doing, whatever. And whatever successes I've had in life, both in the military and out, I will always attribute to the values and principles instilled in me in the Marine Corps. And even though my time in the Marine Corps is fairly short, I consider being an officer in the Marine Corps a privilege. I learned so much about leadership. I learned so much about being selfish, being part of something bigger than yourself, and just pushing yourself to earn something that not everybody does. The title Marine is I've been very blessed in life, beautiful family, health, being able to achieve most of my dreams, but earning that title Marine is like, that's gold to me. It'll always be gold to me.
I had the exact same attitude, brother. It was, you can kick me out of here, but I will not quit.
Yeah,
it was like flight school.
Quit. And I wasn't, there were guys who were just naturals to the military. I wasn't, and it's odd that I ended up loving the military because I hated people telling me what to do growing up. And as a kid, I hated it. And I drank the Kool-Aid. At some point, I drank the Kool-Aid and I bought it, and I tried to learn what I could, and it was an amazing experience. And the guys who quit, I never understood. There were so many guys, and I've talked to SEALs. They say they're in buds with guys who said, this is all I ever wanted. Well, I remember guys in OCS, this is my destiny to be a Marine officer, and they were gone.
What you guys don't realize is that when you go for 6 weeks or the 10-week program, if you DOR, I think you have to wait until like the second week to DOR. Drop on.
There was like 3 weeks in, but you still got to hang out another 2 weeks till I got to go.
Yeah, they don't tell you that. You're out there on the base picking up trash until they ship you out. You see, they look like convicts out there with the sticks picking up trash.
it's so crazy. Like we had a kid who lived in DC, and one of the first runs, I guess he was a marathon runner or something. He like ran home to like Southern Maryland or something. Like we did a run and he just kept going out the gate and ran, and they found he got home somehow, and his parents called and said, "Hey, he's not coming back." I mean,
oh my God.
We had a kid show up with golf clubs. You can imagine.
Oh,
He marched around with those.
That was a good reception.
We had a guy drink Brasso because he freaked out the first week, or two. I remember. And I'm like, well, why would he try? I mean, it's crazy, but looking back on it, it was this crazy experience. I mean, I have these like imprinted memories of it. One of my favorite memories that I talk about, because I think any Marine will get it, is we all got our sea bags full of our gear, and you have to dump it out, and they make you hold up each item. And I said, you're there, they just shaved your head, it's sweaty, it's stinging, you've got sweat pooling in the bottom of your back, the t-shirt is scratchy because it's just out of the package, it's hot. And I remember in your right hand, hold up one web belt, and some guy held it up in his left hand, and bends and thrusts forever, and it's like that. That's like one of those memories that I'll always have of that place.
I was just out in San Diego, and I was hanging out with one of our squad mates that was out there, and he literally, when he showed up, his buddies had packed silky lace underwear and all this stuff, and some dildos and different things in his suitcase. So when they opened up all the suitcases and they check out what you have and stuff, and they're pulling out this lace underwear, a whip or whatever. I mean, oh my God, he got abused like crazy.
We did that to a guy coming home from Iraq. So when customs, remember you had to go through customs? Yeah. We put a bunch of stuff in there, so when they opened it up, they would see it. And he was a pretty mild-mannered, pretty uptight, straight-laced guy. So we had a good laugh out of it. But I mean, it was a great experience. And what's kind of funny is, how this happens 30 years later, you run into a guy who was in a different platoon, and I introduced myself, we're talking. Oh, I was at OCS. He goes, I remember hearing your name screamed from the other squad bay, and we would wonder, who the F is this guy? Who is this poor bastard? And he remembered my name because they would, because of my accent, they told me be the gray man. I remember in the OSOs, like, just show up and be the gray man. It's just as much as I tried in Sears school, it didn't work there. I tried to be the gray man. There was no being the gray man. And so I used to think my name was Just Begin, because they would just come up to me and be like, just begin, and walk away, because I just used to. And so they would hear my name. And it was 30 years later, this guy goes, holy shit, we remember your name being screamed. And we would wonder, who's this Dorelis guy? And it would be Dorelis, because Staff Sergeant Lindsay was a good old boy. And Dorelis. And they would go, who's this Dorelis guy? Like, why are we hearing his name screamed all the time? But, I made it through, went to TBS. Last week at TBS, they call us in O'Bannon Hall. And basically, I'll keep it short. They're like, sucks to be you.
There you are, man.
Yep. The Marine Corps has too many pilots. And here are your options. If you drop your air contract, we'll give you any MOS you want. Right. So if you guys did that, it doesn't matter what your class rank is. We'll give you whatever MOS you want. If you're not going to drop your air contract, it's going to be 18 to 24 months till you get to flight school. And, we'll put you where we need you. You can fill out your dream sheet. I had orders to the 7th Truck Battalion. And what I remember about that is I got my orders, and it was mimeographed, and there was a blank where your name is, and they just write in Lieutenant Dorelis, welcome to the 7th Truck Battalion, Camp Pendleton, California. And I was headed out there, and I was and they said, if you If your eyes go bad in a year and a half, 2 years, sucks to be you. If you, what was the test we took? The aviation test. I forget it because I've been in so many services that I mix it up. But
the
that
ASVAB, no, not
not the
ASVAB, the
ASVAB, it was the yeah,
AQSTP,
right.
whatever.
So
AQS.
that if your date ran out, because I think it was good for 4 years, if your date ran out while you were gone, while you were doing this other MOS, you'd have to take it again. And if you failed it, too bad, all this other stuff, plus like all guys wanting to go to flight school, you were afraid you were going to go blind. You were going to get cataracts at 22, And so anyway, I was kind of bummed, but I was like, hey, I'm a Marine. I'm going to stick it out. And then one of the lieutenants in my class, his dad was a Navy admiral at NavAir. So I guess his dad walked over to his Marine counterpart and like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, we got too many guys. Because it wasn't just us. It was at the back end of the rag. A guys coming through the F4 rag at the time, the first couple of F-18 rags. I mean, the A6, everything. And so it was some sort of really, you know how it goes. I mean, they're going through it right now. It's like they need pilots. They don't need pilots. And so I guess they worked out a drug deal. The Navy admiral was like, hey, we're kind of short this year. Do you think any of these guys want to come to the Navy? And the Marine general's like, go down to TBS and ask. Of course, he gets to TBS and he goes to the commander of TBS. TBS goes, well, maybe you'll get 2 or 3 guys. Well, there was 4 companies that this affected of lieutenants going through TBS. Now, thankfully, I was done with TBS. I was graduating. I had nothing more. As far as I was concerned, my next stop was flight school. So I was pretty happy that I've done all the Marine shit that I needed to do to prove I was a Marine.
Right.
A couple of the other companies, that wasn't the case, but about 150 of us ended up swapping over to the Navy. And basically they said, if you do this, it'll take a few months, a month or so, a month and a half for the paperwork to come through. We'll push it through, and then you guys will head down to Pensacola. They screwed up because they brought us down to Pensacola for flight physicals for a weekend. And that we were like, we had a weekend in Pensacola, and we're like, wait, I can get here if I go to the Navy right now.
Now, baby.
I could be in charge of my deuce and a halves, lining up my deuce and a halves with the hoods up and making sure everything looked, so they kind of screwed up. If they'd have not done that, I think they would have had a lot less guys take the option. But after a weekend in Pensacola, most of us were like, okay, we got to get down here right away. But they gave they ended up giving us other jobs to keep us occupied till the paperwork came through. All of our SPCs wanted to talk to us about it. So in my company, hotel company, we had 2 SPCs that were 0302s and 2 SPCs that were 46 pilots. The first SPC, and they all got a chance to talk to the whole company, not their respective platoons, right? This guy's a Mustang 03, looks like a Cro-Magnon man, was about 5'9", maybe 5'9" wide, all muscle, biceps sticking out of the rolled up sleeves. He looked like a Cro-Magnon man, Captain Loxon. I still remember his name. He goes, I'd rather dig ditches in the Marine Corps than fly airplanes in the Navy. Any of you guys who take this deal, you're a traitor. And he walks out.
Oh.
Next SPC comes in. He was an infantry guy, but I think he was a much different guy, real taciturn guy. I think he went to Ivy League school, just a complete opposite. He goes, you guys got to do what you got to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Good luck. I understand you guys have a decision to make, and I understand a lot of you guys had your heart set on flying. Do what you think is best for you. No hard feelings here. You guys completed this program. And, he was actually, pretty nice, complete 180 from the previous guy. The 2 aviators came out together and they go, we will deny this if anyone asks us, but if you guys don't take this deal, you're fucking stupid. Right. And so getting the okay from 2 Marine aviators was what I think sealed the deal for me. Was like, okay, well, these guys are what I want to be. You know what I mean? and I was always interested in helos. So, you know, they've been to Grenada and Beirut and all that. So as far as I was concerned, they were those salty Marine aviators that, you know, I wanted to be, even though they were captains, you know, and they were like, yeah, you guys need to take this deal.
Oh yeah.
You
Why
know,
not?
you know, they were like, because you don't know what's going to happen. And trust me, just take it. You've done everything you can. You're a naval aviator, and take the deal. So that was seal the deal. So they gave me the H&S platoon there, which is all the guys who fix the ranges and do all that. And it's all the guys who are blind, crippled, and crazy, waiting charges, you know, medical things. It's great. Guys would salute me with their left hand. It was great learning experience because guys challenged me I mean, and you can see my picture as a second lieutenant, the other one in my Charlie's.
Well, look
that
how
I sent
you look right there. I mean,
I look 12. So these guys were all about. So they, you know, it was a good learning experience where I learned to kind of be a little more assertive as an officer, not take shit, but not be an asshole. And I'll tell you my last second lieutenant story, which I love now. I was the base assistant duty officer for the whole Quantico, right? And I'm with this major, another, again, Mustang, been to Vietnam, salty guy, and some salty gunny. And I'm riding around, you know, and we're inspecting the brig and we're doing all the base stuff. And he's talking to me, you know, about the Marine Corps, telling me stories. And, you know, he's like the first major who wasn't in that TBS environment. He was actually a really nice guy. And, you know, and it was weird. I was like, how come he's not, you know, really? He was like, and so it's time to go inspect the chow hall, right? Now, remember, when you're the duty officer back then, you were in alphas, you were under arms, right? The whole thing. So he goes, go ahead in the chow hall. We'll be in a second, right? So I get out of the vehicle, put on my 45, I put my cover on, I check my 2 fingers. I walk in, it's mid-rats, right? So all the guys from HMX are there. You know, chow's pretty busy. I'm walking around, looking around. Hey, Marine, how's the chow? Blah, blah, blah. And I noticed they're all kind of looking at me, snickering, right? And I'm like, what are these guys looking at? I guess they're just, you know, I'm a lieutenant. Well, you know, they're just messing with me, right? And I'm like, hey, and I'm being what I think an officer's supposed to be like, you know. I'm like, hey, guys, how you doing? How's the chow? I sit down, I have some chow. I start walking out. And I remember this guy in coveralls, like, you know, obviously a maintainer comes and goes, hey, sir, can I talk to you for a minute? And I said, and so, of course, I'm trying to go, what you got, devil dog? He's like, sir, your cover's on backwards, right? So, and by this time, the major and the gunny are in there, right? They didn't say a word. And I go over, I fix it. I go over, they're smiling. Sir, did you see that? He goes, goddamn right I saw it. I wasn't going to say shit either.
Because you're going to the Navy.
No, well, it wasn't even, this was, I think, before that. But it was just typical second, like, you know, you can't avoid being a second lieutenant no matter how much you try. You're going to do second lieutenant shit, you know.
Do dumb, stupid stuff.
I thought, you know, my chest was puffed out. I was in my alphas. Had a real 45 strapped, you know. I just been to the brig where they had some murderer in there and this, and I'm, you know, you're feeling pretty happy, and you know, you kind of want to impress the troops, like that you're a squared away devil dog, and you go in there and you make a complete ass of yourself. But that's part of being an officer, man. It was great.
Yeah, but you know what? Good on that maintainer for coming up and at least letting you know that your fly.
Yeah, he was cool. He was like, "Hey, sir," because they were all. And I'm like, "What?" Because I'm like, "What is everybody?" And I'm like checking. I mean, did I spill something on myself? You know, I'm just. And they were just. And I'm like, "What are?" And you know, I'm like, "What are all these?" I started getting a little pissed. I'm like, "What are these guys like?" But there's nothing you could do. You know what I mean? I mean, at that point, all you could do is like shit, and just put the cover on right and walk out with a little bit of dignity you have, you know.
I meant to do that.
You know, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Try to lock up 300 Marines and say, shut your mouth and stand at attention and be an idiot? You just got to, you just got to eat it sometimes. But that's my second lieutenant story.
You know, I was walking through the airport and there was a young kid coming back from San Diego on his way home. And I'm like, hey, Marine, come here. He comes up and goes, did you just graduate from boot camp? Yes, sir. I sure did. I said, can I help you out for a second? What's the matter, sir? I said, your EGAs are on backwards. And I mean, the look of horror on his face when he looks down, he's like, my buddy screwed me. He put him on backwards. He didn't realize it. Then he would put his uniform on and, was feeling good, looking good. EGAs were not pointed in.
It's
They were,
boot stuff. It's boot
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I'm like, here, let me help you, man. Nobody
I
will
just
know.
saw a great video of the ball where I guess this guy was a World War II veteran giving the cake to the young kid, his young PFC, and they're all, they're talking about tradition of it, blah, blah, blah. And this old guy goes, he's a goddamn boot, and everybody cracked up. And it just encapsulates it for you. You know what I mean?
Well, it's so funny that you went through Upshur in 81.
82, 83. Yeah.
Oh, 82. So I went through Upshur in 86. And I guarantee you, we have guys on the site that went through Upshur in 1950. And nothing, tradition is there and nothing's changed. And it is what it is. Now they're all out on Brownfield, but we went through something that the majority of the Marine Corps officers all went through. And it does leave an imprint in your soul. Camp Upshur, love it or hate it. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. But
yeah, it's a great source of pride for me that I never knew. I didn't know it till I spoke to some of the prior enlisted guys going through OCSs. The PT was pretty tough, but
yeah.
I didn't know it was tougher than boot camp. Like I thought it was maybe not as tough because we were a bunch of college boys, but all the prior enlisted guys say, oh no, the PT here is much harder than it is in boot camp. And it makes sense because they, as an officer in the Marine Corps, you're not going to earn the respect of your guys if you're the weak link in PT, and so it made sense. But yeah, like I said, Taco, I mean, I can't emphasize enough, again, the further I get away from it, I'm so grateful and thankful for that experience. And that, I mean, again, the whole Marine Corps experience. And while I love the things I did, especially in the Air Force flying combat rescue, I am one of the greatest gifts in my life and one of the greatest accomplishments will be earning the title Marine. The further I get away from it, the more I kind of wish things would have worked out different. And, I was just at the celebration here in Vegas for the birthday at the Leatherneck Club here. And, it's just, Marines of every age and that common bond of, it's so great to be part of that club. Just, it's kind of great to be part of the Veterans Club.
How did it go when you went into the Navy? How did the guys?
So long story short, literally they handed us our DD-214 from the Marine Corps. We sidestepped over. We swore in as ensigns in the Navy, went down to Pensacola, main side, got our CNTs, which are khaki uniforms. We all still had various stages of Marine Corps haircuts, which we were able to grow.
You didn't have to go back through OCS or AOCS or anything.
No.
That just brought you right over.
Yeah, one of the reasons the Navy really liked this is we were already naval officers, because the Marine Corps is a naval orient. So we understood what a bulkhead was, a deck was. We understood port from starboard. And the Marine AOCS candidates, the Navy AOCS candidates were trained by Marine drill instructors anyway. If you were one of the guys off the street that signed up to be a Navy pilot, you went to AOCS, you were trained by Marine drill instructors. That program no longer exists. But so for them, we were ready-made. We didn't do anything. We didn't have to learn naval terminology. Literally, we just bought Navy uniforms and we're Navy ensigns.
And what'd you do with your dress blue? What'd you do with your dress blues? Just put them in the closet, send them home?
I had them. I don't know what happened to them. My sword I gave to my brother. As a birthday present, I put it in a case for him because he helped me through college, my older brother. So I gave it to him as a present. I don't know what happened to my blues. I regret that to this day. My greens came in handy because the Navy was still wearing aviation greens.
Oh yeah.
So my Marine Corps pants, I used, though I only had to buy the shirt and the tie. because the
Yeah.
color was exactly the same.
Black tie.
Yeah, black tie,
brown
khaki
shoes.
shirt, green. I got a picture. I'll send it to you. Green piss cutter.
Yeah.
Just a different style. So that came in handy. I still have up until about a year ago, I still had the Marine Corps all-weather coat, but then it got ripped, and I ended up getting rid of it. But that was the longest piece of gear because I wore that coat with civilian gear for a long time.
Yeah, what size are you?
I'm probably a 44 now. I was a little snug the last time I put it on.
I think I got one for you, man.
Yeah,
I'll dig it out and send it to you.
Because that was a really cool looking trench coat. So that went over to. But I regret not keeping my blues. I've been trying to find I don't have a lot of Marine Corps swag anymore. And lately I want more. Like I've been buying USMC t-shirts, and I'll go into when I was in UCLA getting my cancer treatment, they got an OSO right there in Westwood. So I was like, hey, you guys got any t-shirts? They gave me a couple of t-shirts. I've been trying to find those green. You can't find them anymore. Remember those green, forest green USMC? It said officer candidate school on the back.
Yeah.
I can't find one of those that they don't make them anymore. And
sure they do. Yeah, I got one at Quantico.
Well, and then
no, they have one down there at the swag shop down there in Quantico, right.
I'll have to go through there because I've been wanting to find one of those. I found one on eBay that was the wrong size and was like beat up, but I've been wanting one of those.
See if we can find you one.
Yeah.
Well, look at this. You were flying 53 shitters there.
Yep. I got through flight school, made it through flight school, survived Pensacola. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie. I was a little, I enjoyed Pensacola maybe a little too much.
Sure. Seville quarter.
I even got told to move on base at Whiting Field. So I wouldn't do it. So what I did was I got a BOQ room. I put some clothes and some uniforms in there, and I would drive in there every morning, go in the room, pull the bed back, roll around on the bed, turn on the shower, shake my head a little bit so hairs whipped. So when the maid came in, it would look like I lived there. But I refused to move on base, even though they told me I had to, because I couldn't do it. But I made it through. August 23rd, 1986 was when I got my wings.
86
and I picked super shitters, and ended up my first duty station was VC5 in the Philippines. I loved it. I love flying those things. I loved it. It was amazing aircraft, and had a lot of fun.
That cracks me up, man. Putting the shitter next to Tom Cruise.
Yeah, it's a great. I love the Navy was awesome. And the cool thing about being a 53 pilot is I didn't spend that much time on the ship, which was even better. But
I was going to say, you shore based the whole time, right?
Yeah, but we floated a little bit, just not for 6 months at a pop, but we would float for a few months here, a few months there, a couple of weeks here, and just enough to go. Like any aviator, I mean, what'd you do you slept and you watched movies and you had the duty if you had the duty, and you flew, and that was it.
Right.
And I mean, it was good. It was, being a naval aviator, I learned, I'm definitely a product of where I grew up. I think the Army and Air Force do a good job. Probably the Army, nobody better at training helicopter pilots, but I'm really glad I was a naval aviator first. The experiences of flying out to sea at night, trying to find the ship, when I know you're a 130 guy, but when you go out to a ship, they give you what's called a BRC, base recovery course, right?
Yeah.
It's before GPS. I mean, Omega was the big thing then. So you're basically doing pilotage and dead reckoning to where you hope the ship is, right? You hope you're not screwing it up. And, sometimes on those dark nights, cold nights over the Atlantic, and you're not receiving the TAC end, and you're looking at your fuel, and you got to get fuel off the boat or it's going to be bad. And it's just, I'm very thankful that I learned to fly in the Navy. I especially now, I was talking about it with some guys in the civilian helicopter industry. IMC is like it's the most horrifying thing in the world to civilian helicopter pilots.
Why is that?
They talk about inadvertent IMC, and there's a video from the helicopter safety center that I just watched, and I said it's a great video. It's well made. It's dramatic, but it's all about avoiding IMC. It's not about handling IMC, and
Right.
Because in the Navy, inadvertent IMC is not an emergency. Right.
Well, we're all instrument rated guys, and you
Right.
get tested every.
But even in the Army,
6 months,
and even in the Army and the Air Force, even though you're an instrument rated pilot, inadvertent IMC is an emergency. The first thing you do after you do your initial steps, level the wings, climb, add power, yada yada, is squawk 7700, right? And they want you to declare an emergency, and then
Why?
and that's translated over to civilian world, where in the Navy it was okay. You punch in, get on the instruments, contact approach, and fly, and get vectors to final for the nearest approach or the nearest boat, whatever.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. And that is why, like, to me, I don't fear the clouds. And in the helicopter industry, on the civilian side, they fear the clouds, unless you're a corporate guy out of New York or Boston or there where you're flying an S-76 or an S-92 and you file anyway. But in my industry, the clouds are the devil, and even I got an autopilot. I got all kinds of good gear. Like, there's no reason for me to die IMC, but in my industry, it's
like Kobe Bryant, right? So it was a Kobe Bryant.
I know what happened. Everybody, the guy was in a fully instrument capable aircraft, but it wasn't rated for instruments by the FAA, which is a problem in my opinion with the FAA. And he was perfectly capable of flying instruments, but he decided to scud run, and he had a high profile client, and he pushed it till he got to a situation where once he went IMC, he was surrounded by rocks. And that's what happened. We all know that, and it's a horrible thing. And I'm not gonna poo-poo the pilot. He was a very experienced guy, but in the civilian, I don't know why. I mean, that was and in EMS, we had the same thing with a A109 that crashed into the rocks in New Mexico. Guy would not climb in and file. He just scud run until he smashed into some rocks. And I don't get
that. See, unlike, my Cherokee 140 or something, I can't just stop a Cherokee 140 and park it.
Yeah, well, that's the misnomer of helicopters. I mean, yes, if I'm in shitty weather and I go, okay, I don't want to punch, I'll land here, wait the weather out or something. Yes, that's an option. But once I'm committed to instrument flight, there's no hovering. Like a lot of fixed wing guys think we can hover on an approach and just come right down. That's just asking for spatial D. I mean, to try to hover on instruments is not it's going to be really tough without some sort of assistance. The aircraft can bring you to a hover now with all the gear on them, but to do it so I'm flying an approach just like you. I'm just flying it. I have the option of slowing it down to about 80
knots or something, right? Yeah.
Right. So I can sit there and I can set my rate of descent and my approach so that I don't have anything happen super quick. Right. But I mean, it's still instrument flying, but and again, I don't want to go off on a tangent. Again, that's why, I'm very happy that I was a naval aviator first, because I think it was the best training in the world.
Eric Saviston has a product with Icarus, where they do the visors that'll fog you out or give you inadvertent IMC.
That's an amazing product. I think that's going to revolutionize training, and he's been talking to me about it for a while, but we talked about this because especially on the civilian side, not so much on the military side, avoidance is where the emphasis is, right? Which is fine, but there's not enough emphasis on what to really do if you get in the clouds, right? And it also depends on the aircraft. If you go in the clouds with one of these Robinsons, and I'm a certified Robinson hater, the thing's so squirrely. Unless you're really a gifted instrument pilot, you're going to have some problems. You know what I mean? But if you have like my aircraft, the EC-130 and the A-Stars that I'm flying, we have an autopilot. We have a G500. I can set the autopilot, set the altitude. I have a terrain avoidance radar. I can get away from the terrain. I can set a climb. I can take a breath and go, okay, I'm in the goo. Where am I? Where's the nearest airport? Okay, boom, I'm level. I'm good. Let me switch over. Hey, approach. I'm inadvertent IMC. I need vectors to final for the and say, hey, I'm busy. Just vector me for any approach. You tell me where I need to be. I don't want to work hard.
Yeah.
We can do that. But the industry preaches avoidance, and I would probably be all about that if I wasn't a naval aviator and go, well, hey, if you punch in, fly the aircraft, get yourself set, and then call whoever you need to call and get,
I got to tell you, the training that we had back in T-34s was phenomenal. When you're doing your basic instruments and radio instruments and partial panel work and all that, I owned a Cherokee 140. I had that for like 9 years. And this guy, Mike Goff, he retired as a colonel. He was a Harrier Bubba. Toomer and I, we would go fly up to DC to go visit his now wife. And one night we're taking off. It's IMC, probably 300-foot ceilings. Take off, climbing up, nighttime. And they tell me, I know that Dulles is going to give me a left turn to the Manassas VOR, the VOR over there, and it'll be a left turn climbing up, heading towards Richmond. And so as I'm sitting there, the guy goes, left turn, hitting whatever. And I start turning, and my gyro starts turning right. And so all of a sudden, instinctively, I start following the gyro. And then I realized, oh my God, the gyro goes tits up. And so I slowly roll back, and I just calmly, I'm like, Mike, reaching my nav bag down there, grab me. I got those big Post-it notes. Grab me a Post-it note and give it to me real quick. And so he gives it, and I slapped it up, and I just went partial panel work. And I knew, all right, now what am I going to do? Declare an emergency and come back and try to shoot the ILS and land? Or I knew that the ceilings were about 3,000 feet. And once we got up there, the line of weather ended at about the state line. So once we hit North Carolina, we're VFR. So we went up, made it. And once we got up on top, now we got a horizon. That was it, man. But I think about how many guys if you don't have that training.
Well, I mean, in my industry, inadvertent IMC is the killer. I mean, guys get in it and they end up seasick,
Yeah.
and I don't know why, and again, I mean, I consider I can pontificate all I want. I mean, it's a training issue. Look, if I was king of the world, the private pilot's license would encompass instrument training. I think that people go around flying unrated in instruments is crazy to me because weather can change like that. But that's just me,
or even be instrument rated, but not proficient.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not proficient. Tomorrow, when I go back to work, I'm going to do my 6-month inadvertent IMC flight with an instructor. And, it's never super pretty, but I know I'm not going to die. You know what I mean? And I'm not afraid to go, well, I'm lucky. I fly around Yuma, so I can ask for a PAR.
Yeah. And you've got nice weather 360 days a year.
But I mean, if something bad happened, I would just go give me a PAR or before I did anything else. A lot of these guys have never heard of a PAR.
Yeah. What's a PAR?
Yeah.
So you're sitting there, you go into the Army, right?
I got out of the Navy.
Army.
Yep. Started working in New York. I thought I wanted to be in the corporate world. I knew within a month I made a mistake. Worked for Airborne Express as a management trainee. Hated it from the minute I did it till about 7-8 months into it. In the meantime, I missed flying. I shotgunned my paperwork to all the Guard Reserve, Navy Reserve, everything out there. The Army Guard came back first.
What year was this?
92 or 92, I think.
Right.
I got out January of 91. I got out like a day before the war started.
Oh my God. That was the day I got my wings.
Yeah, I got out like the day before the war started in the first Gulf War. We had done some pre-war stuff in Sigonella and around there, and the Navy didn't have a stop loss, or at least they didn't institute it till I got out. So like, yeah, you're getting out, peace. And I tried to get back in like a week later, and they're like, no.
Well,
So
you know what's funny is while you were in the Navy, when I was in flight school, it would have been May of 1990. The Navy said we have too many pilots,
yeah, a
and
couple of guys
so
went back to the Marines. A
they
couple of
came
guys
to
I
the
know
Marine
ended up
Corps.
going back to the Marine Corps.
Yeah, yeah. I have
I should have
bunch
stuck
of guys.
around. I do regret that. If I'd have stuck around, I probably would have went back to the Marine Corps.
Those guys were in flight school, and the Navy said, "We're going to
No, but I
cut
know a
you,"
couple
and
of
the Marine Corps
guys.
grabbed them.
I know a couple of guys who did the transfer
Yeah,
and then went back to the Marine Corps. When the Marine Corps was hurt. Not many, but like 2 or 3 are like, "Hey, I just want to go back to the Marine Corps." And the Marine Corps said, "Oh, they were already 53E pilots. They didn't have
yeah,
to go through the rag. They just had to change uniforms
yeah. Not
and
bad.
get brushed up, a haircut and brush up on the regs."
Well, these guys all had to go to TBS, and there's a great story. Adam Holmes, he goes, he gets his wings. I'm already at the rag at Cherry Point, so he calls me up and says, "Hey, dude, could you grab me a NATOPS and bring me a NATOPS up to Quantico when you fly up here next?" Yeah, sure. So I go take a NATOPS up to him, and I'm like, "Hey, man, how's TBS?" He goes, "This place sucks."
So they had a
I'm like,
bunch of winged aviators at
"Yeah,
TBS.
yeah."
Oh my!
So he was the first batch. Now picture this, okay? He's the first batch. It's 1989, a couple years after Top Gun. He's walking around. He's got his camis on. He's got his gold wings on, and this 46 SPC platoon commander. He
Right.
comes up, CH-46 guy. He comes up and goes, "Come here, Lieutenant!" He yells at him, and Adam stops. And he's a Naval Academy grad, so yes, sir. He goes, "You son of a bitch! You don't rate these goddamn!" And he reaches over on his uniform and he rips the wings off his uniform. Who the hell do you think you are? Blah, 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 blah. And Adam just sat there and let this guy rag him up and down. What platoon are you in? What company? Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, "Sir, are you done? What'd you say to me?" He goes, "May I have my wings back, please? I earned these wings in Corpus Christi. I just got my wings. May I have my wings back, please?" And he was like, "What? What?" And Adam pulls his wallet out. You know those little cards they gave us, naval
Yeah.
aviator
Yeah.
cards?
Yeah.
He pulls it out
Yeah.
and goes, "See, sir, I am a designated naval aviator. There's about 6 guys behind me that are coming to TBS, and they probably would appreciate it if you don't rip the wings off their chest either." And the guy was just like, "Oh my God, nobody told him that they were coming." But he said it was the greatest deal. He goes, "The only thing that sucked was all the students coming up to him. 'Hey, dude, what's the gouge? What's the gouge?'" And he's like, "Man, you just got to go down there and study, dude. You just got to study.
Yeah.
The gouge is go to Corpus."
That's kind of amazing. God, that must have been crazy to go through TBS after winging.
Yeah. Yeah, he
But
ended up being
I'm
a
glad they
MAG.
did that, though. I'm glad they did that because then that gives those guys some bona fides,
Yeah, they had to go
and
through 6 months before they came to the rag.
kudos for the Marine Corps for doing that. I think that'll give those guys an appreciation of it, make
Yeah.
them feel like they earned it a little more because they might be. I'm not saying the Naval Academy, but if you've been through OCS and the guy hadn't been through it, even the Naval Academy and the ROTC guys who only had to do the 6 weeks at OCS, I was like, we
Right.
only got to do 6 weeks of this. We had to
Yeah.
do 12, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a little bit of resentment, but yeah. So,
So
um,
when you went out of the Army then, so you go into the Air Force, you got into the Jolly Greens flying 60s?
yeah, what happened was I flew in the Guard for about 4.5 years as a warrant officer, greatest gig going,
Uh-huh.
and then there was a rescue unit on Long Island, an Air Guard unit, and I
Mhm.
was always interested in combat rescue. I was like, oh, that sounds cool, combat rescue.
Right.
And they very rarely had openings, and they had an opening. I applied, I got into it. The Guard unit, the Army Guard unit was very supportive. They didn't give me, because I'd been there a while, they didn't give me a hard time at all. They supported me, my boss gave me a good recommendation. The Air Guard took me in. They're like, okay, we're going to do in-house training. We don't have any slots at the schoolhouse. We're going to do it in-house. So the way the Guard works, and this is generic to both the Air and Army Guard, is you do your 2 weeks a year, 1 weekend a month, but you have what's called additional flight training periods, right? Same as the reserves, right?
Mhm.
And so I would fly twice a week. I ended up working in the theater business in New York and ticket sales. And I didn't start work till 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
I worked like 3 to 9, 3 to 9, and then the end of the show. So I would go fly in the morning, and I had to be on the road by 1 o'clock to get back to the city. Luckily, I was going in the opposite direction of traffic, so I never really I usually would make it. And I would fly my AFTP. So I was trying to get the training done. After about 9 months, a slot came at the schoolhouse at Kirtland Air Force Base. And they're like, do you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I'd rather do that. So I talked to my boss at the theater, who's a guy I grew up with. Like, hey, man, I'm going back on active duty for 6 months. He goes, and you can't, and he's my friend. I'm like, oh yeah, you can't fire me because, blah, blah, blah. But he goes, and he's like, all right, whatever. So I go to Kirtland. I'm in the schoolhouse, and that's mixed guard, reserve, active duty guys. All the guys go. It's the equivalent of the RAG,
right?
And the Air Force crams 2 months of training into 6 months, and so we're there, and the assignments guys coming through for all the active duty guys to talk about assignments and see where the instructor pilots are going. And at the time, the Air Force had not trained helicopter pilots for like 3 years. And they had a lot of inter-service transfers from the Army. And the assignments guy was there, and the active duty guys are like, why don't you see if you can come on active duty? I'm like, all right, I grabbed the guy in the hallway. His name was James Milroy. He just passed away, but I remember, really nice guy. I said, hey, I'm from the 106 in New York. I heard you're hurting. Can I come on active duty? He's like, did the 106 pay for you to go to flight school? I'm like, no, I swapped over from the Army Guard, blah, blah, blah. He's like, okay. He goes, put in a request for orders. If your unit supports it, I'll bring you on for 2-year orders. So I go back to the unit. And they're like, okay, we get it. I said, look, this is just better for me and my family. It's a better deal. I'd like to go back on active duty. It's kind of hard for them to argue against that,
Right.
And
what year was this?
This was September. I went back on active duty September 1st, 1998. And so I get orders back on active duty. I get orders to the 66 Rescue Squadron here in Vegas at Nellis Air Force Base. I get there 3 days after they have a midair collision that kills 12 people. So I get there, the squadron. This is why I learned the Air Force is really different than naval aviation. The squadron is in, complete disarray, basically. I get there. I'm like, hey, do you want me to answer phones? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I've been through this before in the Navy. I'm like, whatever you guys need. They're like, no, just go find a house. I'm like, I don't have any house hunting leave. They're like, come back in 2 weeks. Leave us alone. You know what I mean? Come back in 2 weeks. Took me 7 months to get basic mission qualified because it was just such a weird, just they didn't know how to handle it. And I wasn't used to that because I was used to stuff happening out at sea where it's like, we'll have a memorial and then flight ops keep going,
Right.
So it was really weird. And listen, 12 guys is a lot of guys to lose. And they lost 3 of the pilots were their top 3 instructor pilots. And it was just a very odd time because they were trying to figure out the cause, and there were 3 instructor pilots and 1 kid who had been having a lot of problems. So they're blaming it on him. I remember this is where I learned the hard way. Again, I have to learn things the hard way about the hierarchy in an Air Force squadron, right? So I've been there about 2-3 months. I'm in the Gedunk snack bar in Air Force terms, right? And these 2 guys, senior captains, are talking about whose fault it is and blah, blah, blah. And I'm a captain now. So I go, hey, I'm just curious, guys. I said, I saw the pictures. There wasn't really much left of either aircraft. How do you guys know what happened? There's no recorder. There's no nothing. Why are you guys so sure this happened? Well, these 2 guys start laying into me. You just got here, shut the F up, blah, 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 blah. Now I'm a New Yorker. 2, I'm like, I'm a captain. These guys are captains. I'm like, hey, why don't you 2 guys go fuck yourselves? Right? And fuck you. You don't like it too fucking bad. I asked the question, blah, blah, blah. And I walk out. Come back the next day. And like I walk in the squad and guys, what'd you do? And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, Gump's pissed at you and Ronaldo's pissed at you. And now the DO wants to talk to you. The director of operations is the equivalent of the XO, right? And I'm just like, what? These guys got in my face. I told them to fuck off. They're like, but they're patches. And I'm like, I'm like, what's a patch? And that they're weapons school officers, right? Equal, you know, I don't know that gives you, you know, that some sort of status above everybody else. I'm just like, you know, rank among lieutenants, captains is like rank among horde, you know. So I just didn't like the way they were talking to me.
Yeah.
Well, basically, I'm flying every ride with these guys the next few months, and I'm just getting the shit kicked out of me. You know what I mean? Even though I got 1,500 hours, every flight, according to them, I'm basically one of Jerry's kids who, you know, blah, blah, blah. So finally get through that, learn my lesson, say, all right, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. Ended up getting along with one of them, at least on a personal level. Professionally, he and I never saw eye to eye, but and the other guy ended up PCS, and so I got rid of him. Well, fast forward to Kosovo, right? And the rescue guys, and the rescue, we're kind of a bastard stepchild in the Air Force. A lot of the special ops guys were doing the stuff, and even though we're rescue, we kind of were never in the game, and I was really curious why, and it was bugging me. And you know, you think being a helo pilot in the Navy is a bastard stepchild in the Air Force, you're really a bastard stepchild, right?
Right.
And long story short, Kosovo comes around, and they ask my commander, hey, is your unit ready to go? And he goes, no. So I come in the next day, and they say the boss said we can't go, we're not ready, and blah, blah. I'm like, oh, he's getting fired. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, his only job is to train and prepare his unit for war. If he said we're not ready, he's getting fucking fired. I said, in the Navy, if they said that to us, I said, I've seen guys fired in meetings. You know, I've seen an engineer been thrown off the ship in a port, and I've been in the staff meetings where the maintenance officer said he didn't have enough aircraft, and I've seen the skipper go, you know what, you're not the maintenance officer anymore. So I'm like, you know, I'm used to the way the Navy does stuff, and I'm like, oh, he's getting fired. And they're like, what do you mean he's getting fired? I'm like, he's getting fired. I'm telling you, man. Didn't get fired, just sat and hid out in his office. The crash really messed him up in his defense. Like, he was never the same after that. You know what I mean? Losing 12 guys in one shot. Finally, we start getting some more meat eater type bosses rolling through, and we're doing ONW, OSW, which was awesome. I thought it was combat. It wasn't, but we're flying around Turkey while the vol's going on over northern Iraq. We're sitting at this Turkish base in the middle of the mountains. The Turks are flying out to fight the PKK. We're watching gunfights on the other side of the valley.
Is this in Diyarbakir?
Well, we were at Diyarbakir, but then we'd fly forward an hour to this place called Sirnak, which was only about 8 miles from the Iraqi border on the north. Yeah. And it was a Turkish fob that they cut out of the mountain. They had helicopters there, and they had their version of a cache there. Right?
Wait, was this in 92 by chance?
No, this was 99, 90. I think I went my first time in late 98. And then 90, I did 2 Turkey deployments and 2 Kuwait deployments before the war started. But the Turkey ones were great because we didn't know this, but the Turks have Black Hawks. So we fly these routes, and then the Turkish pilots would say, oh, no, this is very bad. You know, they shoot at us here. We lost a bird here. We don't know. We're just flying around in these valleys going, it's really cool here. And, you know, we look just like a Turkish hawk. So, you know.
Yeah, because I remember it. I went to, I called it Diyarbakir.
Well, the Marine 130 unit was the Air Force units couldn't support us. We had the guys from up in Stewart. They were there with us for 3 months.
Yeah, we went over there in I want to say it was like 92, but the Blackhawks had all big, giant American flags painted on the drop tanks because of that, because they were shooting at the Turks.
Right.
And so they had big stars and bars, not to.
Yeah, we didn't have
not
that.
To shoot at them.
We were just flying around. We didn't know. We were just flying around fat, dumb, and happy. And the Turkish pilots would be like, "Oh no, very bad here," you know. But that we had the guys from Stewart. That was awesome because the Air Force is very just they don't do things on the fly well, right? I remember we were running around and one of the 130s lost an engine. He's like, we could still AR. Don't worry about it. We're like, you guys have to RTB. He's like, no, we're good. If you need us, let us know. I mean, they were like, it was awesome with those guys. We had a great time with them. They were awesome. And, we lived with them at the Abercrombie, and we got really, really tight with those guys.
Right.
And did that. And then 9/11 happens, which was really a crazy day for me. My brother survived both World Trade Center bombings, the one in 93 and 2000, the one on 9/11, because he was a commodities trader. So, and he worked at the World Trade Center. And I'd worked there. My mom got sick and had heart surgery, so I had permissive TDY to the Naval Officer Recruiting Office, which was in the World Trade Center, for 3 months of permissive TDY. So, and I also worked for my brother as a clerk in college. So the World Trade Center complex, that I knew like the back of my hand.
Right.
So 9/11 happens. I remember I was taking a day of leave because my wife had some back surgery, and I get up. I'm a news junkie, so first thing I do is turn on the news, and I see the first plane had hit, and they're talking about it, and I'm like, it's clear blue in a million. How does some clown run into the World Trade Center?
Yeah. And
I'm just going, what kind of moron? And they're like, this might have been a small plane. I'm like, that's a big hole for a small plane. Right. It's not making sense, but it's
same thing as I was watching
and I'm just like, it's not making sense. And I'm all of a sudden I see this other plane. I'm like, that's low. And then I'm like, and then it hits me. I'm like, oh shit. And then boom. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, it's a terrorist attack. So I go tell my wife. She goes, okay, I'm not going to send the kids to school. I said, look, I think I got to go into work. I said, I'm going to try to head into work. Now the traffic on base, because they went to DEFCON, whatever so no one's getting on the base easily. And so I'm sitting in traffic. It took me 3 hours to get to work, normally a 45-minute ride. And I'm listening to the radio, World Trade Center collapse. I'm like, oh, my brother's dead. I still remember how I was like, I guess my brother's dead. But you're just compartmental. I'm like, well, I got to get to work. And then I'll if I don't hear from him, I guess I'll have to call mom and tell her. But trying to figure out what I got to do first, it's just really weird.
Hopelessness though.
Yeah. And then I get on the base. They tell us to arm the helicopters, and which is really weird. The only time we arm was we're going out to the range. Fuel arm them. We're flying patrols. My brother ends up calling my house because I left a message, so I know he's okay. Mm-hmm. I wasn't worried about my mom because she doesn't have any reason to go down to the World Trade Center at 9 a.m. So I figured that, and, I knew some people who worked there. I did end up losing a couple, but actually somebody I knew from TBS who had left the Marine Corps was working for the big firm that lost all those people. That was like on the 103rd floor. He was working for them. So that was really weird. We get in, and at the time, my two bosses were really meat eaters, and both came from special ops. And they were on the phone getting us in they're like, we're in on this. Fuck this. It's not going to be like the last time. We want in. And our first group of guys.
Where are you based out of?
We were at Nellis here in Vegas.
Oh, okay.
And the first group of guys left for Pakistan November of 2001. And we still have been, to this day, we have people in the Mideast rotating in and out. So my first deployment was January 2002. Got there just in time for Operation Anaconda.
You got DFC, Distinguished Flying Cross.
Yeah, that's where I flew. That's 40 years old, my first time in combat. Flying around like an idiot, dark night in Afghanistan, trying to get some guys. Nobody. We were at a FARP. We got scrambled up to the FARP Texaco, which was just to the west of the not the Hindu Kush, just where Anaconda was going on by the Whaleback and all those places. And we're sitting there, and we were never part of the planning. Like when we showed up to Kandahar to set up combat rescue ops, the Army's like, who the fuck are you guys? And We're like, we're Air Force Combat Rescue. And they're like, okay, who the fuck are you guys? Well, don't you know we're coming? They're like, no. We're like, well, we need.
Really?
Yeah. And we were told like they knew we were coming and everything because we had been in Jacobabad. We've been flying missions out of Jacobabad, Pakistan. Matter of fact, there was Marine 130. I was there when that 130 crashed and all those guys were killed. We had been working with those guys. They were giving us AR. And our guys, I think, went and helped recover. We're in on the recovery of those guys. But so we're flying missions. It's 2 hours to the border, then another 2 hours up to where the fight. So we're flying 4 hours just to get to the fight, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And finally they said, you're going to push up to Kandahar. So I go advan with one guy, and he pisses off this Army 05 right away by going, sir, the general said you would help us out and this, that. And I'm like, you know, based on my Marine Corps experience and Army, it's probably not a good idea for a captain to tell an 05 in the Army. The 101st with the Roxons were there. These guys are pretty, this isn't going to go well. Well, of course it doesn't go well. So I'm like, okay, I tell this guy, I said, why don't you help set up our ops? Because they're putting tents up. We had, you know, civil engineers putting up tents, and the Army gave us a piece of ground. And I'm like, let me go see if I can liaise with these guys. I said, I speak a little Army and Marine. So I find the same guy. I apologize. I said, sir, we need a little help. Can you help us out with this? You know, but he's like, all right, you're not an asshole. He puts me in touch. He puts me in touch with his logistics guy, who's a Puerto Rican dude from New York. So captain. So we hit it off like that. I get our base set up because my boss said I need us up and operating in 2 days. 2 days we're up and operating. Our only comms is the Army gave us a Humvee with an old style phone, you know, the old style running wire from. There were two TOCs there. There were the Special Ops TOC and the Army TOC. And we ran wire about a half mile of where our location was. Of course, the first day it got cut by the hundreds of vehicles that are running around out there. Right. So our first mission, I remember standing by the TOC because I was the battle captain that day. Some Army sergeant comes running up out of breath because he literally ran a half mile with a piece of paper going, sir, they need you to launch. Just had a set of
9 line.
It wasn't even a 9 line. It was a set of coordinates. Just said they need you to launch, head out here. There's wounded out there. And that was our first mission. And there was Army medevac unit there. And I remember talking to them later because we have a 30-minute launch window. We were gone in 10 minutes, right? And they were like, we were getting ready to go. And all of a sudden we saw who you guys were. So from that point on, we became victims of our own success because we had a FLIR. So they thought we could fly in bad weather. The Army was crashing a lot of birds. So the Army said, this was early. They said, if it's under 20% of loom, we ain't flying. We didn't have that kind of restriction. So basically any night it was under 20% of loom, we went. And then Operation Anaconda started. We weren't involved. We weren't in the planning. One day we just got scrambled up to the FARP. I think the only reason we got involved in that is our boss came from Special Ops and he knew all the guys in the soft talk.
Yeah.
And so he just said, look, we're here, use us. And we were getting ready to come home. We were engines running, ready to fly home to Kandahar from the FARP. And they come on the radio and go, hey, those guys, they've been trying to get out all day, 3 wounded guys from the 10th Mountain. Nobody's been, will you guys try to go get them? So we're like, yeah. So we shut down, we brief it. My flight lead, Tom Cahill, who's no longer with us, it was like out of one of these movie moments. He calls us around. He goes, hey, listen, we're going to give this a try, but I just want everybody to know there's a good chance we're going to get fucked up doing this. Does anybody have a problem with that? Well, I'm sitting there going, I kind of have a problem with that, but nobody else is saying anything. So I'm like, well, I guess we're going, you know, so
giddy up, man.
So we go, and it was your standard shit show. And, you know, at the time, our launch authority was at PSAB where the KAC was, right? So we're dealing with PSAB. We'd pass them info. They'd pass it back to us like it was new info, right? Then we're talking to a JTAC who we think is with the wounded guys, but no, he's in a TOC somewhere. We're just your typical radios going nuts. We get there. Every GI, the GIs are in the middle of a fight. They all got those little lights and
IR flashers.
Yeah, the little IR flashers. It's just confusion. We land in one LZ. They're like, they start mortaring. So we go, we need to leave so they mortar that LZ, we run away, right? Then we land to another LZ. It's comical now, but I'm sure for these three guys, it wasn't comical. We land, three guys jump on the aircraft. We think, oh shit, these are the wounded guys, right?
Right.
All of a sudden the PJ is like, hey, sir, none of these guys are wounded, right? So I'm like, well, what's the deal? He goes, they think we're here to exfil them. I'm like, they got to go, because we were fat and heavy. We got our internal, three guys isn't going to work. We're like, They got to go. And he's like, well, they don't want to go. I'm like, well, they got to go. So they basically, it's like that scene from Apocalypse Now where the Huey lands and the guy's not going. My PJs have to manhandle these three guys off the aircraft. They think right back into the fight, and we leave. Then we land, and we're taking the whole time we're getting shot at. Pretty ineffective, but
what did it sound like when you get hit? I mean, with the headsets on,
we didn't get
ding,
hit.
ding?
I would just see the tracers, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to look at the tracers, because if I look at the tracers, I'll get scared. So I won't look at the tracers. That was my first time getting. I remember seeing the tracers coming the first time. Like, I took it personal. I'm like, why are these guys mad at me? Do I owe money or something? Why the hell are they shooting at me? You take it personal for a second.
Right.
Until you realize. And then the cool thing was we had an AC-130 with us, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, basically, hey, there's really scary men over there. Can you make them go away? I was like, basically, and so they did make a few of the bad guys go away in pretty spectacular fashion, which was pretty cool. It was really cool, actually. But then we finally find the right LZ. They get a buzzsaw. We land. We had whole blood. These guys, long story short, we get these guys out. We had stayed way past bingo. So we're like, we're not leaving till we find these guys. They're on the radios. You guys got a bingo. Come on back. We're like, fuck you guys. We're not coming. We're just determined to find these guys. We find these three guys. We land. We get back to the FARP. I think we had 7-8 minutes of gas left in the aircraft. But it was, I was just doing what I was doing. As cliche as it sounds, training takes over. You're too busy to be scared. You're just trying to, and just, it was such a fog of war problem. Like you were just solving problems all the time because the information wasn't matching. You're getting conflicting information. You're trying to work all these radios, SATCOM, then all of a sudden, me, I probably said F on the SATCOM. Of course, some clown comes from who knows where he was. Hey, don't curse on SATCOM, just all kinds of stupid stuff. Typical fog of war mission. And we made it work. Right. Look, my buddy Tom, he got the Silver Star deservedly. We several times we were at 8,000 or 9,000 feet. The rotors drooped. He kept us from crashing. I mean, it was about as confusing a mission as I'd ever been on. And, they decided to give us a couple of medals, for everybody. And the night before, a crew had picked up some guys under similar circumstances. So basically in 2 nights, our unit won like 3 Silver Stars, 15 DFCs, a bunch of air medals, about 8 guys, that we picked up, which was pretty cool. Then we traded out. We flew back to Kandahar, traded out with a crew who went back up to the FARP. And the next morning we get scrambled. And we're like, we don't have any aircraft. They're like, you're going on a 130 up there. And this was when the Razor 01, Razor 02 guys, the Roberts Ridge thing took place, right? And one of the things that's not talked about that, it haunts my buddy is they went to where they were and he could see those guys and he was begging for a chance to go in and try to see if he can get out the wounded. And our KAOC said, no, it's too risky. But he was literally maybe a mile, circling, asking for permission to go in. But it was daylight. They didn't want him going in the daylight. The Preds were like seeing all the enemy, and but he's still to this day convinced he could have saved some guys. And then
is this you?
No, I don't. I the pictures, that's a couple of years later in Iraq. I have a picture from after that. That's a couple of days after that mission.
Look at you. You've got hair.
Yeah. And I drew that picture, by the way.
Did you really?
Yeah,
nice job,
I went to an art high school, so I could do some cartoons and animation, and I drew that picture. I was pretty proud of myself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man.
But the best part of that mission, one of the best parts of that mission, Taco, was we were all due for check rides, and they were trying to Stan and Val guys are trying to schedule check rides, and I go up to the commander with Tom, and I'm like, hey, sir, isn't a check ride basically seeing if you could successfully complete a combat rescue mission under difficult conditions with all kinds of shit thrown in and stuff? Isn't that what the IPs do? He goes, yeah. I'm like, well, didn't we just complete a mission with a bunch of shit? And He goes, yeah. I'm like, can we consider that our check ride? And he goes, yeah. I'll send an email to Stanival. Consider your guys Q1, which is, what you get when you pass a check ride.
Right.
Q1, right? So he's like, yeah, consider your whole cruise Q1.
Nice.
And that was it. So that was kind of one of the things. That's my last deployment in Iraq in 2009, when I realized my hairline was receding and I should just stay bald.
Where is your door? Where's the door?
We flew doors off. We convinced the Air Force, because the 160th guys were doing it and the Army guys were doing it. And we said, hey, this is why this is why these guys aren't rolling up aircraft during brownouts. And because we worked with those guys. We were their bitch boys for about 3 years, where we followed them around on all their hits. And we spoke to them, and we were like, listen, we flew with a couple of our IPs, flew with them. When the doors are off and you have a brownout, I can look here and I can see the ground. And when the doors are on, I can't see through the chin bubble. And so that's why you get that drift, that lateral drift, where we're getting a lot of rollovers. So we convinced them to let us fly doors off. And it's funny because a lot of guys really were uncomfortable. They're like, oh, I don't feel comfortable. I'm like, the door's not stopping any bullets. It's an inch of fiberglass, dude. You know what I mean? It's not stopping anything.
Yeah, you've got your chicken plate, if you can see on.
Yeah, I would put, you
got like a little chicken plate thing that slides over, right?
Yeah, but that's not a lot of protection. I mean, look, if
you're going to get swacked, it's just not your day.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, people talk to me like about this, and I'm like, look, I'm not going to tell you I wasn't scared or anything, but the way I kept my mind, the way I trained my mind to work is, there's things I can control, and there's things I can't. I can control how I fly the aircraft, how I try to mitigate the threat, how I flight plan, all the myriads of things you do as a pilot. What I can't control is some guy's going to shoot me in the face with an RPG. Like so I just didn't worry about it. I mean, I distinctly remember sitting in a couple of LZs going, I'm pretty sure an RPG is going to come through the cockpit any minute now, but there's nothing I could do about it. So I didn't. I mean, I landed right next to an IED once. Me and my buddy Jeff, where we land, and the PJs, of course, typical PJ. Hey, sir, just want to let you know there's an IED right outside the aircraft. And then he just goes about his business. And we're like, what? He's like, yeah, there's an IED right here. The rotor wash blew the wires out. So I look, a couple of daisy chain IEDs, and we're like, well, and we're outside. There was a power station south of Baghdad. Look, it was like the Tower of Doom, because that was where all the bad guys were, and the locals were trying to flush them out, and we were going there to pick up some wounded. And you're flying there, and it's like the Castle of Doom looming, because all the bad guys there. And we land,
right?
And I look at my buddy Jeff, and I'm like, well, they're going to detonate it in there as soon as they see us take off, so we're fucked. I mean, there's nothing, but you're just like, well, we're just going to take off. We'll do the best we can, try to get the hell out of here. But I don't think, I think it was either a pressure plate or nothing happened, but it was literally right there. I mean, you're just
That's
like,
amazing.
but my favorite is just the PJ's reaction. Like it was no big. He's like, hey, sir, there's an ID out here. No biggie. Just goes about his business. I'm like, you didn't think that's and I remember going, you didn't think that was a big deal? He goes, nah, I was trying to do this and that. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, you could, I said, it was kind of a big deal. He's like, yeah, it's not that. They don't give a shit. They're crazy. So nothing's a big deal.
Well, do you have your, you got your
I have
feet?
my green feet tattooed on my
All right,
ass.
man.
Yes,
Gotta show
yes,
it on national TV.
Yes,
Come on. Let's see it.
I'll give you the moon, man. I don't care.
No, I'm just teasing. You don't have to show it.
Yeah, I got them. I'm proud of those, man. I'm very proud of those.
Everybody listening to this, if you work with the Jolly Greens,
if you make a rescue in combat, you got to get green feet tattooed on your ass.
You'll get the green. All guys, if they claim their PJs or they work with the Jolly Greens, I goddamn guarantee they've got green feet tattooed on their ass.
The PJs for sure. Not every pilot does it.
Yeah,
the
PJs.
But the PJs for sure have it, and most rescue air crew do it, but some guys like to put them somewhere else.
Yeah,
a bunch of us went and got them. That's another funny story. A buddy of mine, I remember the poor tattoo guys had to tattoo like 15 of us, right? Only one was a girl. So, so they, but I remember I was in a booth and my buddy Chris was in another booth. And all of a sudden I hear the tattoo needle go bzz, and then I hear this big thump, right? Yeah. And he fainted. As soon as the needle touched his ass, he fainted. Boom, dead away.
The only tattoo I ever wanted, we were in the Philippines and this gunny's like, hey, or no, hell, he was a warrant officer navigator. He goes, hey, sir, I bet you a beer. I got your name tattooed on my ass. And I'm thinking, what? San Miguel, what was it? 25 cents a beer.
35 cents.
I'll take you up on that bet. And he pulls his pants down and it said your name in cursive letters. I'm like, you're a son of a bitch. All right, I'll buy your beer.
That's a good one, man. That's a good one.
He made more beer back on that. Now, it's getting into an hour and a half, and we haven't even touched something that I want to talk about. This right here. Look at that. Dude, right. Col Quinn, New Amsterdam. So how did your acting career, something you always wanted to do, same here?
I was a movie freak I've been a guy who loved movies. I went to the movies every weekend with my friends or my brother. I've loved movies and television. I've always kind of been interested I went to an art high school, so I'm a little bit of I got an artist's heart. I've loved acting. I always wanted to do it. I just wanted to fly and be an aviator more. That was, and luckily, I've always been around it because two of my good friends that I grew up with are working actors. My buddy Nick has been in hundreds of things and has built a pretty good career for himself. And we're still great friends today. And so I always was around it. And when I retired, at that point I'd survived 2 wars. I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. What's the worst they can do? And you mentioned earlier how your military experience helps you. I'll tell you how it helps you. Unfortunately, a lot of actors are neurotic, and there's a lot of rejection and there's a lot of nerves and neurosis associated with that rejection for some people. I get it. For me, my attitude is I can't get killed or maimed. So I don't, kind of my attitude about anything is it can't kill or maim me. It's not something I'm going to freak out about, unless it's something that happens to my family or one of my pets. Other than that, I don't worry about it. So I studied acting. I started studying. I studied a little when I had my 7 years broken service. I take it serious, but I do the best I can. And then I go to an audition. I do the best I can. I don't worry about it because there's nothing I can do. You're not getting back in there to try again. You either screwed it up or you did good and you're not there's so much, again, that's out of your control. You may not look like the person they want. There's all kinds of factors. So and the things you talked about, I think life experience makes you a better actor. You know, there's
Right.
guys who study and are incredible actors, but I think life experience also helps you, you know, because playing certain types of people or just, you know, I think what helps me is I'm natural. I don't get freaked out, but it's a tough business. I mean, I did New Amsterdam, then COVID hit. So not a lot going on since then. I just did a movie here in Vegas, which was awesome, called Prisoner's Daughter. I had a scene with Brian Cox from Succession fame, you know, who's
Yeah.
a great actor. So having a scene with him was amazing, and I'm just plugging away at it. You know, again, now having survived cancer too, it's even, I'm like, look, I survived 2 wars in cancer, so I don't freak out about this stuff. I just do the best I can. And my actor day job is helicopter pilot, so I don't work too hard. You
Yeah.
know, I'm a blessed guy, Taco. I mean, my glass is pretty full. You know, I got a beautiful family, 2 beautiful daughters, grandkids. My wife and me aren't together anymore, but she put up with me way longer than she should have. She's a great person and a great mom, and you know, I've achieved every dream. I love this country. You know, I mean, I love being an American. All I did was say, I want to try this to be this. The Marine Corps gave me the opportunity. The Navy gave me the opportunity. The Army Guard, they gave me the opportunity to fly, serve my country in difficult times, which I'm super proud of. And then I said, I want to be an actor. And people are like, you're crazy. But guess what? I did it. Somebody liked what I did. They gave me a job. Somebody liked
And
what I did. They gave me another job.
do you know what I love about this is that I've got a good friend, Scott Gibson, who was in the Pacific, and he played Captain Haldane, and he did just an incredible job. So I love is that there aren't enough veteran actors. You look after World War II, Paul Newman on the Astoria or on the Bunker. He was on the Bunker Hill, I think.
Yeah.
Clint
All the World War
Eastwood,
II actors, Lee
Lee,
Marvin,
all
Charles
those guys.
Bronson, all of them. But I will say this. I'm part of an organization called Veterans in Media and Entertainment. And if you get a chance, look it up online.
Right.
It's basically a networking group with actors in every aspect of the film and television industry. I'm sorry, veterans in every aspect of the film and television industry. As a matter of fact, there was an online symposium today. So we're talking about producers, writers, directors, actors, camera people. There are a lot more than you think.
Really?
And it is growing more and more. And it's not at the same level it was post-World War II, but post-World War II, pretty much everybody was in the war. So whatever profession you were in, you know, chances are if you had 10 neighbors, 9 of them were veterans.
Right.
You know, and I think that's why there was less problems with World War II veterans, even though there's a lot of problems. I think one of the reasons they haven't had the transition issues that Korea, Vietnam, current era veterans have is because no matter what you did, you were working with somebody or knew somebody who had a similar experience. So you could sit and talk about the war. You know, one guy was a Marine, another guy was at the Battle of the Bulge, you know, so they could sit there and talk about the things that they lived with. I think the problem is the subsequent wars, veterans become a much smaller minority in toto in regards to the rest of the population. And I think the biggest problem, in my opinion, with transition is the fact that when you're away from the military, you don't have anyone who has that shared experience, except maybe first responders or, you know, but it's changing. I've worked with a lot of actors who are veterans.
What's the name of that kid that played evil Darth killed Han Solo in Star Wars?
You talking about Adam Driver?
Adam Driver, yeah, he was a Marine.
Yep.
He was I think 1-7 or 1-1.
He got hurt and had to leave the Marine Corps, and to this day he'll tell you he regrets not deploying with his unit.
Yeah.
Rob Riggle, really funny guy.
I sent Rob an email asking him to come on the show. I met him at the Country Music Awards. I think he's a great guy. He's funny as hell.
I wrote him an email a long time ago, and he wrote me back. You know who wrote me back once? Dale Dodd. Long time ago, before I got out of the military, I wrote him an email saying, hey, I'm interested. And it wasn't an encouraging letter, but he wrote me back. You know, he's like, it's the toughest industry in the world. Most guys don't make it, blah, 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 blah. But he wrote me back, said, good luck.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
love Dale and Julia. He was my second guest.
yeah, I mean, he
Dale
wrote me
Dye
back. I
on the
was
show.
shocked that he wrote me back, but he did.
Oh, he's a great American.
I'm Taco. I don't want to take. I am the luckiest guy. I consider myself a blessed guy. I'm a guy, and people raise their eyebrows. I consider my unusual and highly undistinguished military career a gift. I would do it again, and I loved every minute of it. Even, yes, there were some bad times. I've lost friends.
Yeah.
Combat is combat, but in a weird way, I like that too. Yeah, I mean, I hate,
Well,
people look at me like crazy, but I like the work. I like the job. I wanted to know I wasn't a coward. I'm not ashamed to admit that. I wanted to know that I was not a coward. And when the time came, I would do the job. Right. And that was very important to me, and to know that. And then the job was so awesome. Our job was to save guys, was to get guys out, was to, I don't, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there's guys who, I killed these many guys who are snipers, or Cobra guys who, and Apache guys who just were. I don't think I didn't kill anybody. The hand in killing some people, made some radio calls, but I know the exact number of lives I've saved, and I'm pretty psyched about that. Guys that are home with their families and hopefully will do great things, and then a lot of local folks that we save, especially in Afghanistan. It's the greatest. It's the greatest. I miss it every day. I'll always miss it till the day I die. And it took me a long time to be good with not doing it anymore. I'm not going to lie. I had some transition issues, not as bad as others. I never got super dark, but I was adrift for a long time as far as coming to grips with the fact that I'll never do anything like that again. And
I don't miss the circus.
I don't miss the nonsense.
I just miss the clowns.
Yeah, exact. That, what? That's a great way to put it. I miss the guys. I miss the mission. I worked with some of the most amazing. That was just to work with people that are just so unbelievable. And for me to witness, and this is across the board. I've had Marines shooting under the rotor disc of my aircraft, just to get their buddy on the aircraft. I've worked with some of the craziest bearded, tattooed special operators, and I think one of the things, it's a small little thing, but I tell people, because people talk about it's so scary. Why do you? I said, listen, when a guy looks at you, some special operator, and says, hey, sir, if shit goes south, you'll be there, right? And you tell him, yeah, there's no not going. Doesn't matter how scared you are. Either that or you got to live with the stamp of being a coward, which for me would never be acceptable. I'm not saying I'm a brave guy, but I know I'm not a coward. You know what I mean?
Skippy, man. Damn Skippy.
And I've worked with some brave guys. I love to goof on the PJs. I always make fun of them and bust chops but those guys are unbelievable, man. I've seen them guys they're willing to hoist out of an aircraft in a hailstorm of bullets, or just, and I've had to order them back on the aircraft because they want to stay.
Yeah.
In the fight, let me stay here, sir. And they're like, no, you got to get back in the fucking aircraft now. But I mean, it's been a gift, man.
Let's end it with this. What is your favorite service?
Wow. Okay. Again,
it's like ladies' shoes, right? It's like the gun that you strap. Every one of them has their own particular thing.
I owe so much to all of them. I mean, the Marine Corps made me what modicum of a successful person I am, especially on the military side. The Navy let me fly. The Army Guard let me continue to fly, and I just have a really good time and make a lot of money, basically on a boondoggle. And I got to fly the Huey, which was just a gift, to be able to fly such an iconic helicopter.
Yeah.
And then the Air Force Combat Rescue was the mission. Look, a lot of the shit people make fun of the Air Force about, it's 100% true, but I know I was in the fighting part of the Air Force. I mean, we were at war with the Air Force 90% of the time because we were war fighters, and so I love that mission. You know, that tattoo on my ass means a lot to me. You know what I mean? And I was around some of the most selfless, bravest people I've ever seen. You know,
some of the best aerial fueling I've ever done was up in Keflavik with the Jolly Greens up there. And those guys, we did 2 rescues. We went up there for 2 weeks, and we did 2 rescues like 200 miles off the coast.
Yep.
So we went in the squadron, briefed. The guys took off. We sat around, drank coffee for about another 45 minutes. Then we took off, climbed up over top of them, dropped down. They refueled, which I love refueling 60s because you guys can keep up with us. And then they popped off, went over this Russian fishing trawler, pulled these dudes up out of rough seas, got them back. We refueled them. Appendicitis, or the other one was like, I think the dude drank bad homemade vodka or something, alcohol poisoning.
But I got to do one of those off the. I got to do one of those off the coast. I was up at Moffett to get seasoning. They said, right, and they were doing training, trying to get me through my upgrade. And this rescue came up, and they're like, "Okay, do you want to do the training flight or the rescue?" I'm like, "I want to go on a rescue." Went 600 miles out to sea to a ship. I think we refueled 3 times on the way there, twice on the way back. Long, it's like an 8-9 hour mission. And it reminded me, I was like, oh, no wonder I don't miss being a naval aviator. I didn't see one ship on the way out there until we got to the ship. We landed on the ship on this giant tanker that had a helo spot. We landed on it. We picked this guy up who had sepsis. We brought him to Stanford University Medical Center.
Saved his life.
That was amazing. And, you know, I loved working. I got to be honest. I've worked with the Marine 130s 3 times, twice in a combat environment. And it was awesome working with you guys. I did an emergency landing. I was hitching a ride on the Marine 130, and we had to do an emergency landing, and then the brake locked up, and we were stuck. God, I forget the base, somewhere in Pakistan. Like near, I don't know where, literally the middle of nowhere. And I loved it because the Air Force to get this aircraft to fly again would have had to bring in people and this, that, and the other. And there's a staff sergeant and a gunny and big dip in his mouth, and they're just banging on the wheel. And the pilots are standing around like, okay, let's go. And I'm like, you guys are going to go? No, we're not calling anybody. We're leaving. I just got back and we got in the aircraft and we left. But it was great, man. Look, I know you interview a lot of warriors, but I think the sentiment's the same. I love the work. I love the job. It was amazing. It was a gift, and I do it again tomorrow. And
twice on Sunday. We're all, it's a brotherhood. That's for sure.
I think it's a gene. I think it's a gene. I do. I think there's a gene that makes you want to do this, because all the guys are the same. I listen to all kinds of podcasts. Yours. All these guys say it's all I ever wanted to do. And it's a call. I don't know. It's hard to articulate, but it was the best gig going.
Stephanie
got to work
Hall,
with guys like you, man.
Oh, dude. Any day, twice on Sunday. Both of you guys are tremendous Americans. So thank you both for being there on the tip of the spear. Thanks, Stephanie. I just talked to Stephanie today. This girl has the most incredible collection. If I sold all of my armor, my Jeeps, and maybe if I sold my house out there, I could buy her collection. It's about $500,000 worth of stuff she has. It's incredible.
Well, when we're done here, I have a couple of questions for you on your collecting, because I got a buddy out here who's a collector, and I want to see if maybe you can help him out with some.
Oh yeah, love the mug. Hey, Scott Hondo, there you go. Have you ever heard Quiet Bird? Are you a Quiet Bird? QB.
What is it?
Well, it's because it's top secret. I'll have to tell you later.
Well,
I got to get
you. Kill me if you have to tell me. Yeah.
No. I won't have to kill you. I'd like to get you into it. This is my dad, John Bell. Easy to figure out where Yogi is from, but being an actor, yes, Dad, he's an actor. I always wanted to be an actor.
Do it. Do it.
I've done a couple movies. I've had fun. I got shot and killed. It was great.
I mean, do it. I'm do it. Listen, man. I was shot. I'm like, I'm too old. They're always looking for folks. If you can do it, you do it, man.
Well,
just like I tell guys who want to be pilots, they're like, I don't know. I'm like, do it. Do it.
Cindy Lee, if you get a chance, she has a podcast. She probably asked you to be on the show. Yes, Super Stallion Copter. We called them super shitters.
Super shitters.
Super shitters. Hey, PJ, here we go. Qualified versus current versus and proficient. Helicopter air carriers definitely treated like he says. 12 years as a civilian guy. Not 1 minute of actual IFR. God, that's just amazing to me. Dean. Hey, Dean, how are you? Good to see you. Hey, this is my buddy Fitz. If Fitz is still
I remember
watching.
the cattle cars.
Yeah, cattle cars, man, to the Ville. Camp Upshur 1960. Fitz got me hooked up with his buddy Brian, who was at OCS with him, bunkmates, I think. Hey, here we go. Another Marine actor, Freddie Joe Farnsworth. I got to get you up with him. He was in Band of Brothers and Pacific, and he worked for Dale. Now he's got a company. I don't have a shirt on, but yeah, Freddie Joe.
I want to know who the guy who played the gunny was in Pacific when he throws the bullets at the lieutenant. That's one of my favorite scenes in that series.
Oh, when the guy turned around with the gun and Haldane goes, "Don't look at me."
Yeah.
Don't look at me, Lieutenant. Yeah. Oh man. Well, it's been a great show, my friend. And
thank you so much for having me, Taco. I know we've been trying to get it done, man, and I appreciate it. It's a great opportunity. Just love talking military stuff with military guys. Believe it or not too many military aviators in my job. Although my job's a bunch of young kids who got trained on the GI Bill. About 3 or 4 of the guys I work with are all 03s.
So that's awesome.
They're tough kids, man. And they're now flying helicopters. They've been through a lot, and they deserve. I'm really happy to see them doing well, man, because they were 3 or 4 of them were in the thick of it back in the day. So I'm really happy for them. They deserve it.
Well, don't you remember the little thing at TBS? They had a poster up, and it was this infantry guy, and he's sitting here, and it's kind of raining on him. He goes, "God, it really sucks." And then you see a recon guy, and he's sitting there, and the rain's coming down harder, and he's like, "God, I love how much it sucks out here." And then you see a force recon guy, snake's about to bite him, the water's up to his neck, and he goes, "God, I wish it would suck out here more." Yeah. And then you see the pilot flying overhead, and he's looking down, and he goes, "God, I bet it really sucks down there."
I got to be honest. I'm like, at TBS, and I went through in March, in the winter. I remember cracking the ice to ford the little streams, and I remember the guys, all the grunts would be, "Hoorah, I love this shit, hoorah," and I'd just be like, "I don't really love this shit." Like I remember for the 3-day war, it was winter. We got dropped off in the snow, and I remember watching the 46 take off, and I'm like,
"Yeah,
he's gonna be drinking a beer soon." Oh God, I just want. Remember, like I was not a natural grunt. Some guys loved it, and I was like, I'll always remember, "God, I love this shit. This is what it's all about." And I'm like, I don't really love this shit that much.
Fig Mac, fuck it, I got my air contract.
Yeah.
You should have studied harder, man. I don't. You justify your flight pay, but how do you justify your base pay?
I remember, waiting for them to come pick us up, and everybody's, time to spare, call Marine Air. Just like, whatever, dude. I posted this picture in Facebook recently, and it's like this. I stole it from some guy. It's like on the top is a picture of these French royalty, with their floppy sleeves, and they're looking very dainty, and it says aviation. And on the bottom, it says infantry, and it shows these pestilence. And, and I'm just like, hey, I'm not going to lie, man. If it's true, it's true. Just embrace it.
That's right.
We looked down on the little and then everybody laughed. One guy got mad at me. One ex-special forces guy said, it's elitism and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, come on, man. It's a joke. God.
Yeah, lighten up, Francis. Come on.
It's just, but all my infantry buddies are like, it's true. It's true. They're all like.
Everyone makes fun of you until your helicopter buddies come up to you and go, "Hey, dude, I bought these Turkish rugs. Do you think you could bring them back with you?" And I'm like,
"Oh man,
we did.
Sure. We had you guys take stuff back for us to Diyarbakir. We did. We had you guys take it from Diyarbakir to Incirlik so that we could get it on our birds. I remember that. We went out and we gave you guys a bed, a bunch of rugs.
Yeah.
We tried to sneak a dog on, but you guys said it wouldn't work because we had this puppy. We're like, let's sneak the dog. And we had a guy, we had a guy who was an American, a Turkish American, went over to visit relatives and got conscripted into the Turkish army.
Right.
And he was trying to get us to help him desert to get back. But we're like, we want to, but it'll cause, we wanted to, but our bosses wouldn't do it because they were afraid it would cause an international incident, right?
Which it would.
But we're like, well, we'll sneak him back and whatever. But because he literally went there to visit relatives. And then we had another kid, didn't speak a word of English. All we did was teach him curse words. And he didn't know any English at all. And we would tell him, just tell him, fuck you. And he would smile and go, fuck you to people.
Fuck you, GI.
He didn't say GI. He literally, I'm sure he learned eventually, but he was a young kid, naive as hell, didn't know any English at all. I was shocked that he didn't know English curses, but he didn't. So we were just like, hello means fuck you. And he was going around saying fuck you for a day till somebody told him. But we're like, some guys like, hey, this Turkish dude just told me fuck you. We're like, oh, okay, yeah.
Man, when I was over there, the guys came off the ship and they landed and they had the UE. And I never forget, I've got a picture somewhere and they've got Tom Cruise with the thumbs up in the jet taped to the center of the dashboard. And they both turned around and they're looking at me and they got a thumbs up. And they took me out and they called it Duck, Duck, Turk. So we go fly around and we're upwind. We're downwind on these guys, flying up on them, and they're knitting they're sewing, they're mending their fishing nets.
Yeah.
And they come screaming like, 10 feet off the deck to see if they would duck. So they called it Duck, Duck, Turk.
We used to fly over Iraq because in the summer they sleep on the roofs.
Yeah.
And we would come over at 50 feet and we would fly. We worked at night mostly, especially when we were supporting the special ops guys. So we'd fly back from Al Assad to Balad.
Yeah.
And the sun would be coming up and we would go right over them like at 50 feet. And we'd be like, good morning. And and one time I know I created an insurgent for my flares went off because whatever, I'm a dummy, but whatever the photon count or whatever it is on the plume detectors, well, a regular fire will set it off, right?
Right.
So we fly by this village and they've got a fire going, so our flares go off. Thank God. I watch, because I'm at 50 feet. So I watch my flare barely miss this little girl, thank God, but it goes right in this guy's house and I lit his house on fire. And I'm like, well, that guy will be out tomorrow with an AK. You better not fly over here tomorrow. We just created it. We just created an insurgent, but yeah, we used to try to wake them up in the morning. Like same thing. You'd come in low and they wouldn't hear you you'd see them jump up. Our gunners would tell us that they're jumping up, the blankets are flying and stuff.
Good times.
I feel bad about that now, but at the time it seemed like fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun.
The guys
what are they going to do? Shave our head and send us back to Iraq, brother?
Listen, I was a permanent major. I was a passed over major my last couple of deployments. There is no better rank in the military than a passed over major. There is literally nothing they can do for you. The guard guys in my guard unit, they'd all flown in Vietnam. They tell me they'd run guys. They'd come down at night along Highway 1 with their lights on and try to get guys to run off the road. I don't think it changed. I don't think anything changes. All this stuff never changes. If you read about war, I'm sure there was a Roman soldier telling stories about crap they did.
Yeah, great show tonight. My wife's in the other room wondering why I'm laughing my ass off. Can you think about we could have a show. I bet if I grabbed about 6 Marines and stuck us all on here, we could have a show of telling nothing but bullshit stories about putting your XO's house up for sale when he's on leave, or messing with the bald guy in the squadron, leaving empty shampoo bottles.
Oh my God, I've got I remember my Navy squadron. When the guy comes in, the wardroom, the new guy's like, hey, I'm Joe Schmo, blah, 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 and he comes in, he goes, hey, listen, I'm cool. I don't mind any jokes, whatever. Just don't make fun of my wife. And I'm like, is this guy stupid? There were pictures. So this is before the internet, but guys are cutting out Playboy pictures, and somehow they got a picture of his wife's face and they're taping it up around the squadron. And I'm just like, we just do crazy stuff. Oh my God. Just
You definitely have to be thick-skinned.
my hat. Sure. I would forget my cover all the time in Iraq. Yeah. I just would forget it. It was in front of my hooch, frozen in a block of ice once. There's just we could do a whole. You're right. We do a whole show on just
that
funny. People are surprised when I tell them I spent most of the war laughing my ass off, because you just make fun of it. There's no more absurd situation than war, and then people trying to make sense of it and keep a bunch of people in line that you're asking to do the most ridiculous things. So it's just an opportunity to laugh your ass off. And when you sit back and think about it, you're like, you're asking all these young people you put them in the most crazy situation where their lives are at risk, and you're asking them to behave, and then I think aviators, what you're doing is taking a bunch of overgrown children, basically children with hair, and you're asking them to behave, and you give them the keys to these crazy machines and tell them to go do crazy things with it. And then you expect them to behave, things like General Order Number 1. I mean, we had a still in my squadron, an actual still. We would bring juice from the chow hall. The PJs made prison pruno with yeast and juice.
Nice.
That's the part I miss, is just railing on the man, and just especially once I got past, though, I actually told the colonel, "What can you do to me, sir? Send me to war? What, not promote me and send me to war? I mean, what are you going to do?"
Yeah.
And my boss loved it, because he could send me to do stuff. I'd get it done. And then when he got a complaint, he'd go, "Well, he's passed over. He's going to retire soon. What do you want me to do?"
Yeah.
So he would be able to, I impersonated a lieutenant colonel as a captain to get stuff. We had the black fleece, had it up here, had a lieutenant colonel's cap cover on. I walked into the supply section. And the cool thing in the Army, a PFC never deals with an 05, right? And I had 2 PJs, big PJs. I said, just stand there and stare at the guy, right? And I walked in, and I'm like, we need that. I was like, I'm Lieutenant Colonel, and we need this, that, and the other. And he was like, yes, sir. And I signed some bullshit name, and we left.
That's like MASH. I mean, yeah.
No, well, it was. I mean, MASH, I enjoyed more after I went to war. Like, I started watching the show again. I really liked it a lot more.
Yeah.
And then I read Catch 22 again, and I started realizing that I knew guys who reminded me of characters in Catch 22.
Yeah. It's so well written.
All those things I enjoyed more after I went to war, because I realized, how, they're making fun of it, but it's true. And all those things, and it doesn't change. Like, I read Fighter Pilot by Robin Olds, which is a great book, by the way, if you ever want to read a really good book, because that guy's the real deal. Yeah. And he talks about coming back from Europe in World War II, and gets back, and they're on the bus, and some lieutenant comes on, "You guys can't go here and go there and do this and blah, blah, blah." And they're in New Jersey, and they just want to go into New York and drink and have some fun. And you guys have to do this and do that. And it's him, another captain, and some Army colonel. And the Army colonel says, "Hey, Lieutenant, listen, me, the major, and the captain will be at this hotel in New York if you need us." And the lieutenant's like, "Bah, bah, bah, bah." And he's like, "End of story. See you, bye." And they leave, but it's just the typical stuff. Like, I'm like, it doesn't change. No. And I said, if we went back to Roman times, there's some guy with a parchment paper and a feather and ink just being annoying to the Roman legion guys who just got back from a battle. I'm like, that stuff never changes. That's why I love reading about it, and I love talking to veterans of other wars, because that kind of stuff never changes.
I was just talking to my uncle tonight, and he called me up to tell me he had dinner with this A6 guy that had he ejected on takeoff off the carrier. Anyway, he was telling a story about flying T-34, and he was taking midshipmen up, and he goes, "Have you ever been through the thermal barrier?" And the guy's like, what? He goes, we're going to go through the thermal barrier at the speed of heat. And he took him up. He took him up about 8,000 feet. And he rolls him. All of a sudden, he starts shaking the airplane. He's kicking the rudders. He turns the heater on. And he goes, and he falls out of the sky. And he goes, do you feel that? We just went through the thermal barrier.
Well, it's like on the ship, you tell the kid to look for the mail buoy.
Oh, yeah.
And he's standing there looking for the mail buoy all day, and be like, yeah, you got to look for the mail buoy. Stand there with a gaffer stick, and he'd stand there and he'd see the mail buoy. You have to pull the mail.
12 years old on Tiger Cruise, the captain put me in his chair with a binocular and said, okay, Mitch, very important job. You're the mail buoy watch. But hey.
Well, they got me when I showed up at the RAG, right? The 53 has a piss tube, right?
Oh, no, they didn't tell you to go. They didn't tell you to go clear the Venturi.
And of course I go, what's this? And they go, oh, that's the intercom if the ICS goes out so you could talk to the crew, right? He goes, try it out. Try it out. I'll go in the back. I can hear you. So I'm sitting there going, pilot the gunner with the piss tube on my face.
We used to tell the new students, go out there and blow into the piss tube to see if the check valve is bad, to blow the boots up on the airplane.
We had the Marines in the Philippines. We told the Marines that we needed a push start, like in a clutch, right?
Yeah.
So we had a platoon of Marines took the parking brake off, right? And we're like, all right, push. And they got the thing rolling. We about 10, 15 feet, and then we hit the APU.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, these guys were like, they jump up and down and like, yeah.
Yeah, we're the heroes.
Oh man, it was great. I could that kind of. I mean, look,
we can send it to them.
I got nailed, but that piss tube thing, that never fails because I bought it hook, line, and sinker. Didn't even cross my mind. Made sense. It was right here by the console, by the seat. Yeah. I'm like, this makes sense. And probably the same kind in the 130, right? It's just a funnel with a little tube.
No, we didn't have piss. We had a piss tube in the back.
No, this was in the cockpit.
No, I mean, we didn't have a piss. Yeah, we didn't have a pisser in the cockpit.
Because you guys could get up.
We were civilized.
This was by the cockpit. It was like a funnel, a plastic funnel.
Yeah, like in T-34.
Yeah, and I'm just like.
Didn't you recognize that from the T-34?
No.
You never used the pisser?
I don't remember the piss tube in a T-34.
Yeah, we had a piss tube in the T-34, but the thing was, when you pulled it up and looked at it, you had to kind of tap it, make sure some asshole didn't take his dip and throw it in there. Put it in there.
Ah, okay.
And all of a sudden you're pissing all over your hands.
I don't think I used one. I tell you, the first couple of flights, I was yakking my ass off. I wasn't worried about pissing. I was puking my brains out.
Oh.
First flight, I remember when he's showing me the tour. He's jerking the stick, so I slam my head on the canopy every time. So he's like, "Look, this is one of the landmarks you'll use." Bam! And he yanks it over to 90 degrees. Back, and it was hot. And and by that time I was just like, that was fam one for me.
Oh shit! Well, we will. You know what? I'll get a couple guys, and we'll have a.
I think you should do it across the services because it's not going to change.
No, we'll have a bullshit night. I've got guys from every branch. Even have some cross dressers. We'll get them all on here. We'll have some fun. Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna drop you off. We will say 2 hours is a good evening, my friend. I'm gonna have you on again.
Just before you go, I do have a question for you though.
What's that?
On just the collect.
Oh no, I'm gonna drop you off. Yeah. I'll be with you in a minute.
Okay, cool.
All right, brother. Hold on a second. Hey, 2 hours. Of course, my dad is gonna give me serious grief for running over my 1 hour. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was 2 hours of immense fun. Sit back, relax, enjoy the rest of your week. I will see you next week with this is kind of crazy. I'm in this actor mode deal. I have got one of the most interesting guys coming on. He is from Afghanistan. He came over to the States. He's living the dream. The war hits. He goes back over to Afghanistan to serve with Marines. And I'm telling you what, you guys will really like this show. So next week, I will see you on Tall Tales with Taco. Until then, as I always say, adios, hasta luego, auf Wiedersehen, tschüss, shesheni, au revoir. Dobrogato gozaimasu, shinde kudasai, ciao, arrivederci, tashakur, assalamu alaikum, I got them all. You guys have a great one. Take care.